Let's get more on this new reporting from investigative reporter at the Washington Post, Carol Leonnig. Carol, it's an incredible TikTok that you all have put together at the Post about this meeting where you have Donahue. He's out on the mall in a T-shirt and jeans, and he rushes into the Oval Office without time to change and get back and talk to the president and try to intervene in this madness that's taking place. So let's just step back for a minute. Who exactly is Jeffrey Clark? And is this as simple as a guy down the chain of command, way down, getting a whiff of power and having the ear of the president and saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes, perhaps to become the next attorney general, including to promote theories like, as I mentioned, in a memo to Rosen and Donahue, that the Chinese were controlling voting machines with internet-connected thermostats in the United States, and Donahue obviously dismissing that out of hand?
Yes. Such a great TikTok here by my colleague Michael Kranish at the Washington Post, and you've really hit all the important high notes of this, including one of the most senior people at the Department of Justice telling Jeffrey Clark maybe he should go back to his office and they'll call him when there's an oil spill because he has no qualifications to be an attorney general. He has no criminal prosecution record, nothing to even qualify him to talk about an investigation of election fraud, which he promises he will deliver to Donald Trump, which is also a huge red flag. When I investigate it, we'll find a ton of, widespread fraud. That's kind of a worrisome thing for someone to say. I will just answer your question, Willie, your smart question, by saying that this is an attorney who had a very conservative history and record, even after leaving Georgetown, and at Kirkland and Ellis, while at this very respected firm, was viewed as being pretty conservative, although level-headed, as Joe mentioned earlier. What is so interesting about him is he is sucked in to the president's vortex. President Donald Trump at the time is essentially everyone in the administration behind the scenes who had any interaction with Donald Trump knew what he wanted to hear. There is fraud. This election can be overturned. And when Jeffrey Clark said that, he was invited to the Oval Office rather quickly.
Right, absolutely. And Carol, as we give us a sense of what we can expect in the next hearings, but also in these conversations, I think what we see for the first time is real dialogue between people who are holding the line. That's something that we all sort of tried to figure out what was going on in there. We weren't sure if that was happening. It was happening.
Yes, such a smart point, Mika. This idea, and now I see Donahue and Rosen, especially in this narrative where they're basically saying, are you crazy, Mr. President? What is it going to look like when everyone in the Justice Department is resigning days before this great rally you're planning for January 6th? What's that going to say about your presidency? There are a half dozen people, and Donahue and Rosen are among them, along with Vice President Pence, that if they had done anything differently in those days leading up to the insurrection and the attack on the Capitol, if they had done anything differently just by a hair's breadth, Joe Biden might not be president today. The people, the person that the American people chose to be president might not be in the Oval Office. That's how dramatic some of these days are.
Can you underline that, Carol? Because that is just so important that people realize. People like me say, the Senate's going to hold. We're going to get through this. We have a strong constitutional republic, great checks and balances. But you see in this story that we're still here as a constitutional republic. We're still here as a nation that doesn't throw out elections when one side doesn't like the outcome because of some people that almost every American's never heard of before, who have quietly worked in as the storm is gathering and quietly worked and furiously worked, and I think most importantly stood up to an angry president at the very time we needed them to do that.
You know, it's such an important point, Joe, and it's like on the continuum. Everyone may or may not remember Alexander Vindman, a man listening to a phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky in Ukraine. He's just in a basement office of the National Security Council, and he stands up and says, wait a minute, what the president just asked the Ukraine leader to do, investigate an American citizen who happens to be named Joe Biden and his son, Hunter Biden. That seems like a crime to me. I need to report this. That's standing up. Well, in this case, fast forward to 2021, you have as the transfer of power is about to happen. It's only, maybe 17 days away. Donahue and Rosen, the acting attorney general, say, not on our watch. If you remove me as attorney general, if you hire this guy, we're gone. It must have been quite a thing to say that to the president, who everyone knew wanted one answer. You will announce corruption and fraud in this election, and then, as Trump said, I'll do the rest. I'll take care of the rest. Just have a press conference. He wanted to sow doubt, kind of like tobacco companies wanted to sow doubt about, cancer being caused by smoking cigarettes. And if the president could do that, he could unsettle and disturb the ultimate transfer of power. That's what he believed he could do. And Vice President Pence, to your good question, did the same thing. Once rioters broke into the building and President Trump put a target on Vice President Pence's back and people were chanting to hang Mike Pence, Pence said, you know what? I'm going to stay in this building and I'm going to certify this election.
You're here. The Washington Post, Carol Leonnig, thank you so much. And I just want to add one more person there, Mitch McConnell, who everybody wanted to break. And McConnell said, the hell we're going to break. We're going to stay here. The writers aren't going to get their way. We're going to do it. And again, I have some extraordinarily progressive people that were locked in a room with him who were not fans of Mitch McConnell, who said, everybody else was ready to go home. Mitch McConnell said, we are not moving. So
incredibly dramatic.
You look at these times. Yeah, incredible.